All right, so are you ready for another deep dive? Today, we are going to be exploring a pivotal chapter, a really key moment in the life of Swami Vivekananda, his second journey to the West. Now, you might already know Vivekananda, as this dynamic figure who really brought Vedanta and yoga to the West, back in the late 19th century.
Right.
And we're using Swami Nikhilananda's complete biography of Swami Vivekananda as our main source today.
Okay.
Specifically chapter 11. And it really reveals, like a whole other side to this man, right? And to the mission that he was on.
Yeah, what's really fascinating about this second trip, in 1899 is that it wasn't just a repeat of his, earlier success. This time Vivekananda is coming back with a very different perspective. He's facing some health challenges and he's wrestling with how his teachings have kind of evolved.
Yeah, and think back to, that first visit, right? That electrifying debut at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago.
Yeah.
He was this powerful voice challenging these stereotypes about Hinduism, and he really presented, kind of like a warrior aspect of the tradition.
Right.
But now, we're going to see that he's feeling this pull to show, a different side, a more, I guess you would say, contemplative side, a Brahmin aspect, as he called it.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with those terms, Brahmin refers to the priestly class in Hinduism. So they're associated with scholarship and spiritual knowledge, while warrior, evokes those ideals of courage and action, defending Dharma.
Right.
Vivekananda really saw both of these as essential parts of a complete understanding of Hinduism. And he felt, that it was time to, bring this Brahmin side to the forefront.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he chooses to do this while, he's facing some serious personal challenges. He's dealing with his declining health. And there's this really powerful scene, in the biography where he's trying to convince Swami Nikhilananda
Oh, wow.
to go with him, right? To accompany him on this trip. And Vivekananda, he's clearly feeling this weight of his mission, It's almost like he breaks down in tears when he's asking Nikhilananda to share the burden.
This moment really emphasizes how much he was committed. And it also, gives us a glimpse into what was happening with him internally. It wasn't just about spreading some message. It was about fulfilling, this sacred duty, even while his own energy was fading.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, what was pushing him forward? Despite all these difficulties, was it just purely dedication to the mission? Or was there something, a bit more, something deeper going on, like a spiritual urgency maybe?
Well, I think a clue can be found in, his purpose for the second journal, what he said about it. He wanted to see, how his work was progressing in the West, but he also felt a responsibility to go deeper, to refine the message and present a more, a more complex view of Hinduism. He wasn't just, going to repeat his earlier success. He was very consciously evolving it.
So this trip was less about, like conquering some new territory and more about kind of cultivating, like a deeper understanding.
Exactly. And this shift, I think, in focus is reflected not only in his intentions, but in how he interacts, with people and what he teaches along the way. On the voyage over, he would have these, these really deep conversations, sharing his, his changing views with his companions. And luckily, we have some firsthand accounts of this, thanks to Sister Nivedita, who, wrote down a lot of his, his sayings.
Yeah, and some of those quotes are, a little surprising, to say the least. Like, he said, "The older I grow, the more everything seems to me to lie in manliness. Be wicked if you must on a grand scale."
Right.
That doesn't sound like your typical, spiritual guru, does it?
It definitely challenges the image of, this perfectly serene, otherworldly figure. What's so striking about that quote is how much it emphasizes boldness.
Right.
Even a willingness to embrace these, less conventional paths.
Right.
It suggests that real spirituality isn't about, just being passive and pious. It's about actively engaging with life, even the darker parts of it.
Yeah. It's almost like he's saying, don't shy away from the complexities of life. Embrace them.
Right.
Wrestle with them. And, maybe through that struggle, you'll find something truly profound.
And this idea of active engagement is also clear in another quote. "It is we who struggle who enjoy life, and never you who submit." Here, he's contrasting conservative and liberal approaches. Basically saying that, the act of questioning,
right,
of pushing boundaries, that's what makes life vibrant and meaningful. Blind faith, to him, wasn't a virtue.
So instead of looking for comfort, in dogma, he's encouraging, a more dynamic approach to spirituality, one that embraces critical thinking and personal exploration.
Exactly.
I wonder how that resonated, with his Western audience at that time. Yeah, they were probably more used to these more rigid, religious structures.
It must have been both challenging and liberating.
Yeah.
But that was Vivekananda's gift, wasn't it? He was offering the spiritual path, that didn't demand planned acceptance, but instead invited you to grapple with your own doubts and arrive at your own understanding. And maybe that's why his message really connected with so many people, even those who weren't, part of any traditional religious framework.
Yeah. This idea of challenging, what's accepted, of not just submitting to the way things are. It seems like that's something that was happening in Vivekananda's own life too, right? It wasn't all, smooth sailing on this second trip, even though he was, becoming more popular.
Right, you're right. In America, along with the packed lectures and enthusiastic crowds, he was also dealing with a whole new set of challenges. Yeah, financially, things weren't always easy, and there were some disagreements starting to come up within his group of disciples. Some people who were really close to him even, decided to leave the movement entirely.
So even while he's, presenting this image of a spiritual master, he's still dealing with, these very human problems and conflicts. It makes him seem, more relatable in a way, I think.
Absolutely.
Like, it reminds us that even those people, that we put on a pedestal, they're also going through the same messy stuff that we all face in life.
For sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of those moments that make him seem more human, there's that famous story about Vivekananda and the mulligatawny soup. It really shows how he could find joy and these deep insights in the most unexpected places.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. For anyone who hasn't heard it, could you maybe give us the rundown?
Of course. So picture this. Vivekananda's deep in thought. He's just given this profound lecture, and then all of a sudden his face lights up and he just exclaims, "I know it, I know it." And when people ask him, what's he figured out, he says with this twinkle in his eye, how they make mulligatawny soup. They put in a dash of bay leaf for flavor.
That's such a great story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds us that even someone with, with Vivekananda's, incredible intellect and spiritual stature, he could still be captivated by something as simple as figuring out, a recipe, a culinary discovery.
Right, exactly. And maybe there's even a deeper lesson in there, about remembering to stay open to wonder and delight, even when we're in the middle of, all the complications of life.
Yeah, it also shows, how grounded he was, right? Like he wasn't so, detached from the world that he couldn't appreciate a good bowl of soup.
Right. Now, it's all of these everyday experiences and challenges. There was one event that would have a really lasting impact. A gift of 160 acres of land, nestled in the San Antone Valley in California.
Oh yeah, this is the land that would become Shanti Ashrama, right?
Exactly.
The peace retreat. But it wasn't just about the land itself, right? It seems like there was something deeper to it, like a spiritual calling maybe.
Exactly. And what's really remarkable is that Vivekananda, he immediately knew, he felt like this was the will of the mother, referring to the divine feminine energy that he often talked about.
Yeah.
He was adamant that Swami Triyananda, who had come with him on this journey,
right,
that he should be the one to take charge of this land and build a spiritual center there.
Yeah. And his instructions to Triyananda were pretty interesting. He told him to destroy even the memory of India and lead the life.
Right.
That almost sounds like, like a contradiction, right?
Yeah.
Considering, Vivekananda's whole mission was about sharing, Indian spirituality with the West.
It's definitely a statement that tells us a lot about how Vivekananda's vision was changing. He wasn't saying, forget where you come from. He was talking about going beyond those roots, about finding the core of the spiritual path, beyond any cultural boundaries. He saw Shanti Ashrama as this place where, people from all different backgrounds could gather to search for truth and discover, the divinity within themselves.
So it was about creating a space where the focus was on those universal principles of spirituality.
Exactly.
Rather than, any one specific culture's or religion's dogma.
Exactly. And this emphasis on self-reliance, and taking universal approach to spirituality, it seems to mirror what was going on within Vivekananda himself. When we read his letters from this time, we start to see a man who's really grappling with a profound inner transformation.
So on the outside, he's still this, dynamic teacher, in engaging with the world.
Right.
But on the inside, there's this shift happening, like a turning towards a different kind of truth.
Yes, and his letters, they give us a glimpse into this inner world. He talks about this longing for peace, this growing feeling of detachment from worldly things, and a sense of surrendering to a higher power. He writes, "I have no wish, no ambition now. Blessed be Mother. I am the servant of Ramakrishna. I am merely a machine."
Wow. It's almost like he's shedding these layers of identity, like letting go of the need to achieve things for himself and merging with something much bigger.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's still very much involved in the world, traveling, teaching, and establishing institutions.
This tension between, being engaged with the world and this desire for spiritual detachment, it becomes even more obvious as his journey goes on.
Yeah, it's really interesting how he seems to be holding these two, seemingly opposite things at the same time, being so engaged in the world, and yet also having this yearning for inner peace. You mentioned that this tension becomes even more clear as his journey goes on.
Yes, exactly. So after America, Vivekananda's travels take him to Europe, and it's during his time there, especially in Paris, that that his observations about Western society, they kind of start to fuel this growing sense of disillusionment, I guess you could say.
What was it specifically that troubled him about what he saw in the West?
Well, he was really disturbed by how much emphasis there was on commerce and materialism, which he saw as kind of these driving forces behind greed, conflict, and ultimately, a loss of that spiritual connection.
Yeah.
He felt like the pursuit of material wealth and power had completely overshadowed, the pursuit of deeper values and a more balanced way of life.
It's amazing how relevant his critique still feels today, as we're all dealing with things like economic inequality and consumerism and just, the crazy pace of modern life.
His insights were really ahead of their time. For example, while he was in Europe, he said that Austria was the sick man of Europe, decades before the Austro-Hungarian Empire actually collapsed.
Wow.
And his prediction that the next big global upheaval would come from either Russia or China, well, that turned out to be pretty accurate, to say the least.
Yeah.
He seemed to have this really deep understanding of the underlying currents of history, even while he was also, searching for a way to kind of withdraw from all the turmoil of the world.
So it's like, in a sense, he was living in these two worlds at once, right? Like the world of social and political realities and this world of inner searching and spiritual detachment. Yeah. Did that duality, does that create any internal conflict for him, do you think?
Well, when you look at his letters from this period, they do show, this feeling of inner turmoil and this deep longing for liberation. But I don't think he saw it as a conflict. I think he was really trying to kind of blend these two worlds together, to find a way to be in the world, but not, of it, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. And this attempt to synthesize, to find that balance, it's almost reflected in the way he continued to, engage with people from all these different walks of life.
Right.
Even as his inner focus was changing.
Exactly. He wasn't, running off to some cave to meditate in isolation.
Right.
Even in Paris, with all this disillusionment he was feeling, he was still, connecting with people, sharing what he knew, and attracting new followers.
Yeah. We talked earlier about him taking part in the Congress of the History of Religions in Paris. Well, what was that experience like for him?
Well, while it wasn't as big of a deal as his his appearance at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago, the Congress still gave Vivekananda another chance to, to talk about how he understood Hinduism and to challenge how Westerners were interpreting it. He refuted these theories that were trying to reduce the Siva Lingam to just a phallic symbol. He talked about how Hinduism and Buddhism share common roots.
Right.
And he argued against the idea that Indian art and drama were heavily influenced by Greece.
It's interesting how he kept defending and explaining these aspects of Indian culture, even as his own personal focus was shifting towards this more universal idea of spirituality.
Yes. And it really highlights how complex his journey was. He was both this proud representative of his cultural heritage and also this visionary who could see beyond cultural boundaries.
Yeah. And this vision, this yearning for more universal spirituality, it seems to be present in his final reflections as his journey is coming to a close.
Exactly. His letter to Miss McLeod, his dear friend Jo, it's particularly moving in this way. He writes about longing for the great deliverer and his desire to be absorbed in the mother. Expressing this deep longing to go beyond the limits of the individual ego and merge with the infinite.
Could you share a little more from that letter? His words are always so powerful and evocative.
He writes, "Now only the voice of the Master calling. I come, Lord, I come. Let the dead bury the dead. Follow thou me. I come, my beloved Lord, I come. Yes, I come. Nirvana is before me. I feel it at times, the same infinite ocean of peace, without a ripple, a breath. I am glad I was born, glad I suffered so, glad I did make big blunders, glad to enter peace. I leave none bound, I take no bonds." It's
both beautiful and kind of heartbreaking. He's expressing this profound feeling of surrender, of letting go of all attachments, and this readiness to embrace ultimate reality.
And even in this final surrender, there's this sense of gratitude. This deep acceptance of everything that life has given him, the good and the bad, the successes, and what he calls the big blunders.
It shows a remarkable level of self-awareness and spiritual maturity.
And I think it's this journey towards self-realization, this constant striving to go beyond our limitations, that's really at the core of Vivekananda's message, a message that still resonates today.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Vivekananda's second journey, what are some of the key takeaways that we can, kind of carry with us?
Well, I think we've seen Vivekananda not just as some spiritual teacher, but as a complex person, someone who's wrestling with doubts and responsibilities and the challenges of living in a rapidly changing world. He reminds us that, the spiritual path isn't about reaching some fixed point of perfection, but rather it's about this ongoing process of growth and self-discovery and a willingness to kind of embrace those paradoxes of life.
And maybe as we continue on our own journeys, we can ask ourselves, as Vivekananda told Turiyananda, what would it mean for us to destroy the memory of our own cultural backgrounds and just lead the life, to search for those universal truths that connect us all, regardless of culture, religion, or any other label?
That's a really powerful question to consider, isn't it? It encourages us to look past those external identities and connect with something deeper, something more fundamental about what it means to be human.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Swami Vivekananda's incredible and transformative journey. Until next time, keep seeking, keep asking those questions, and keep diving deep.
I hope you like this chapter. We need volunteers and sponsors to create content with even better quality and with more variety. If you wish to join this initiative as a volunteer or sponsor, please click the links given in description below. To help us reach more viewers, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Biography Central. Thank you for your time. It means a lot. Namaste.